Hello. Okay, so I'm back again, and we're still in the respiratory system, and we're going to talk about how gas is transported through the tissues. So we left off on the pressure gradients of how we're flowing through, and now we're getting into what is actually happening on a molecular level through the tissues. Bear with me. Okay, so where to start? All right, we're going to start off with oxygen. So oxygen is transported through the body at a 1.5% through a dissolved gas in the plasma, and 98.5% is carried by hemoglobin in the blood. So for every hemoglobin molecule, you're going to have 4 oxygen molecules bound to the hemoglobin. Okay? And that's what we call oxyhemoglobin. Whoever came up with these names are genius. Okay, is a genius. So what you need to know about oxyhemoglobin is they talk about this thing called saturation. So if an oxyhemoglobin molecule is 100% saturated, it has all of its oxygens bound to it. Okay, so I'm going to explain kind of what that means. But if saturation is at 100%, oxygen is bound, all 4 oxygen molecules are bound to hemoglobin. That's where the oxygen is at, on its hemoglobin. Okay, it's like The Bachelor is hemoglobin, and oxygen are the 4 ladies left. Who are we going to get rid of first? Okay, anyway. So the way that saturation is affected, what causes it to go from 100% saturation to less in any form, okay? So what's going to affect saturation of hemoglobin is going to be partial pressure in the tissues, temperature, and blood pH. So we're going to start off with partial pressure. So if I'm activating my tissues, if I'm doing anything active, if I'm moving, if I'm walking, my tissues are active and they're using oxygen, okay? Because oxygen is kind of like it's life force. It's how we need oxygen to create energy for our cells so we can use our tissues. So if we're actively using our tissues, we're burning through that oxygen and creating carbon dioxide as a byproduct. Okay, so anyways, so we have active tissues. So the pressure of oxygen in our tissues is low. What does that mean for saturation? Well, it means it's going to be low. We're going to have low saturation because we have low pressure of oxygen in our active tissues. Why is that happening? Because we're using up all of the oxygen. Hemoglobin is giving you oxygen. It's lowering its saturation so you can use that oxygen. So since we are at low oxygen, hemoglobin is donating its bachelorette to the tissue. And this is a terrible analogy, I'm so sorry. But hemoglobin is giving up its oxygen to be used in the active tissues. So therefore we are at low saturation when we are at low pressure in active tissues. Okay, moving on. So temperature affects saturation as well. If we have a high temperature, our tissues are also active. And when we also have a high temperature, hemoglobin denatures. What does denature mean? It unravels. Okay, it's not functioning. It's changing shape, it's deraveling, it's denaturing, and it dumps all of its O2. It's like, blah, I'm falling apart. I can't hold the hands of my bachelorette because I am melting. So all the oxygen goes. So if we have a high temperature, we're going to have low saturation. Okay. So my arm is getting tired. Okay, so blood pH in active tissues. So if we have active tissues, we already said that we're using oxygen and our byproduct is going to be carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide actually increases acidity. So if we have high carbon dioxide in the tissues, we're highly acidic. And if we want to lower that pH, we got to give up the oxygen. So hemoglobin's going to give it up again. So if we're high blood pH, we are low in saturation. Okay, and then here's my really bad graph that's very simple. Okay, so saturation 0 to 100. Okay, and then this is the pressure of oxygen, millimeters mercury, 0 to 100. So this I could actually, okay, I'm gonna use it for partial pressure. Okay, so if the pressure of oxygen is at 100, saturation is also at 100, because those oxygen molecules don't need to leave hemoglobin. They're chilling. You have plenty of oxygen. So saturation is going to stay at 100 when the pressure of O2 is at 100. Now let's say we're getting active. Who knows what the bachelor's doing? Anyway, so we're getting active. We're using up oxygen, and now we are at a low pressure of oxygen. Well, this is going to also put us at a lowered pressure of saturation because hemoglobin is going to give up oxygen, so we have energy to keep doing whatever we're doing because we're active. Okay. So, over here we have the carbonic acid equation. 70% of CO2 reacts with water to form carbonic acid. Okay, we're jumping into carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide plus water, and then we have a catalyst here. We have an enzyme, carbonic anhydrase. It's going to catalyze this reaction, and we're going to create carbonic acid. Okay, and so when carbonic acid disassociates, we have hydrogen ions, and then we have bicarbonate. And the arrow is going backwards because this system can be run forward and backward. So now we're going to come down here into a tissue cell. We have carbon dioxide leaving the tissue cell, going into the interstitial fluid. Then it's going to pass through a capillary wall. I think it's a systemic capillary wall. We're going to go into the plasma, and then you can follow carbon dioxide into the red blood cell, where it's going to then bind with H2O via the help of carbonic anhydrase to create carbonic acid. Carbonic acid will dissociate. Bicarbonate will exit the red blood cell into the plasma. And when bicarbonate exits the red blood cell, this simultaneously opens up a metaphorical door so chloride could go into the red blood cell, and this is called the chloride shift. So my teacher explains it as there's a revolving door here that when bicarbonate pushes out the revolving door, chloride gets pushed in. And why is this important? Because this is how we carry carbon dioxide in the blood and other reactions that it causes. Okay, thanks.